This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply located in Dayton, Ohio, exclusive distributor of Jen Allen templates and Put a Lid on It t-shirts. We are a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network. Find all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs, including the largest stock of GR pottery forms at cornellstudiosupply.com. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters, by potters.
Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 520 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Today on the show, I'm joined by Yoshi Fuji. He spends hours carving intricate patterns drawn from kimono and Japanese wrapping paper on each of his functional forms. In our interview, we talk about his approach to pattern and his relationship with Baltimore Clayworks, where he has been a resident instructor and now the director of exhibitions. If you'd like to find out more, you can follow Yoshi on Instagram at Yoshi Fuji Ceramics. Before we get to today's interview, I wanted to thank the folks that donated to our recent fund drive. We are listener supported, so I'd like to thank Phil Varner and Tom Lauerman for their contributions. If you'd like to get involved yourself, you can do that at talesofaredclayrambler.com/donate. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. Well, let's start talking about how you came to the States. So when did you first come to the U.S.?
When I was in high school in Japan, I think some of us go through this sad stage of our life. Like, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I start hating myself, my family, all my schools and everything. And I start stop eating or hurting myself and all the stuff that I was dealing with. I did not know how to cope with it. The way that I could escape from that consequence was to think about other places, like moving to different country, learning about different culture and languages. Then I decided to just leave Japan and decide to go to the school in the US. And I decided to go somewhere that my parents cannot find, and I find myself in Mississippi. I went to a private school. Then I had some connection with the teachers from US. Then one of the teachers are from Harrisburg, Mississippi. So I went to University of Southern Mississippi for my undergraduate school. I never touched clay when I was in Japan, but my first degrees that I decided to study was Spanish and anthropology, and it was quite reading heavy classes. I could not really catch up with all the stuff that I had to do. Then I decided to take ceramics class for fun, and that kind of got me into the art field, and I ended up taking more classes in art.
There must have been a tremendous amount of culture shock. Like you mentioned, the reading part of, trying to read a lot in English was hard, but I also imagine that the food going from Japan to Southern Mississippi was totally different. Yeah. So what was that like that first couple months trying to get used to all that?
So I stayed at the dorm. So most of the food that I was eating was from the cafeteria food, and people complain about it. And like just the culture shock, like you mentioned, like I could not really adjust to that environment. So I could not eat for like maybe 2 months or so. Then at like one moment, it's like, wait a minute, like I have to eat to survive.
Well, the reason I ask is when I moved to China and first went to a grocery store, grocery shopping was so overwhelming because it's a basic necessity. Like you mentioned, you have to eat, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily know like what's the best. Like for me, I was trying to find peanut butter, and peanut butter in Chinese cooking is just for sauce. It's not really for eating. So I kept asking like for the peanut butter, and people were just looking at me like I was insane. Like, why would you eat peanut butter?
I think the exoticness of moving from the Western culture to the Eastern culture, or us like Eastern culture people to come to US or other culture might be a little bit different because like we have McDonald's and like all the fast food and stuff like that. But there's authentic food from like your situation in China might be totally different from what we might remember seeing. So yeah, like Southern cooking, great, right? Like everything is fried, and yeah, I immediately adjust to that environment. I gain so much weight and stuff like that. I learned how to make sweet tea though immediately. That was a new
That's a requirement for sure.
right.
So once you got into clay, like you make vessels, you make pots, but what was your initial interest? Did you want to make pots for food, or was it more that art? You just wanted to make art because it was soothing to you?
So the first experience with the clay was the non-major ceramics class um, during the nighttime. I was taking a class with some other, nice old ladies in the community, and I was just having fun with like pinch pot, little this or slab tablewares and stuff like that. And I get so excited and take it back home, start using it, or I start giving away to my friends. And whenever I visit them, sometimes or often, I saw what I made in the kitchen sink. Then I really found it interesting that they just not only enjoy the fact that I made it, but they actually made, I mean, they use something that I made, whether it's the drink that I mean, the coffee that they have in the morning or whatever, right? I just thought that making a connection through something that I made was just so wonderful. So I mean, when I was in graduate school, I had to change my work a little bit, functional to sculptural, like to challenge myself. But I always thought the beauty of my creations used by somebody. So I always have the interest in making a functional objects.
In the pots that you've made in the last, I guess since I've known about your work in the last 10 or 15 years, there's a real interest in pattern. So you have a lot of like carved patterns, so, pretty intricate patterns that are carved into the sides of pots. What's the reference with the patterns? Like, how do you find pattern that then goes on to the pot?
I guess it's about maybe like two things. The personality wise, like just sit down and focus and trying to figure out how I put those patterns onto the pots, or trying to learn the efficiency of, that's not the efficiency, try to acquire the skill of carving is really important. So that's one thing. And also, to find a purpose in making, I mean, not just me, but other artists are doing the same thing. But it's easy for me to look back on what I saw when I grew up in Japan, and not only the clay vessels, but maybe the wrapping paper or the kimono, or always there's some sort of pattern as I grew up. So trying to wrap that fabric or paper or whatever those pattern onto the vessel and trying to celebrate the containment is the initial interest that I have toward the pattern.
Yeah, and the scale of the pattern, I can very much see the kimono or the wrapping paper because it's very small scale patterns. So you're carving, I would imagine, for hours. Like this is a very laborious carving process. What do you think in your personality enjoys that amount of focus to be able to obsessively do that for an hour or two?
So if I make this one vessel, let's say in 1 hour, again, my personality always make me think about how I can do it within 59 minute instead of 60 minute. It's like I try to make it more efficient. I try to make it more uniform, try to make that improvement of each vessel that I make. So the carving, like sit down and just focus and trying to figure out how I can make it better is definitely suit to my personality. I can't really produce so much because it's quite intense process. So within that 3 hours or 4 hours that I can actually sit down and carve, I have to make as many or satisfying piece possible. So that's my approach to making, really.
Can you talk about how you approach pattern on multiple objects? Oftentimes I'll see sets, like you'll make like a teapot, 2 cups, and a tray, like something that's all going together. Or you'll make cups that go together, bowls that go together. Like how do you approach pattern when you're trying to unify a set?
Maybe back in like few years ago, I realized like I am putting patterns on all the surface possible. Like I had to learn how to leave some space blank. After I start learning about the composition on the surface, start seeing those companion objects like you talked about the sets, I could see it a little bit better as whole instead of just one piece. Then start taking one part of the pattern out, then replace with another object. So it's like when we're trying to take the images of our work too, how we place it. So again, I get so excited about the carving or the technical aspect of it. And I just want to show off, like I can do this in 2 hours or whatever. But I have to really learn, like this object itself may be good too. But like you mentioned, if this piece exists as a set of 4, or this piece, this cup may have the connection with the teapot, then I have to think about how I'm going to present it together. So maybe some sake set, the set itself can be okay, but if I brought in the tray, that will make it even more as one. Did it make sense? I don't know what I'm talking about right now.
No, you're making sense the tray sets the stage. Like I think about it as it gives context for the other things. But the reason I was asking about the sets is because you invited me to be in a show this year, called Together at the Table that you curated. And it was all about sets. Like you asked artists to make sets. So we made dinnerware and serviceware, but I had not done an assignment like that for a while. And so I got so much out of you asking me to do that. Like I wouldn't have worked that way in my studio otherwise.
But you don't get the commission of like, oh, please make me a set of 4.
Well, I avoid commissions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for years I had a lot of technical problems, and every time I would get a commission, it would be the time in which the glaze would change or the clay would change or something would change. So I to be honest with you, haven't done a commission in years and years and years.
So for this show that you mentioned, Together at the Table at the Baltimore Clayworks in this past spring, I wanted to invite, accomplished artists like you to be part of it. I intentionally selected not the emerging or the new artists. I intentionally chose seasoned, experienced artists. Then Clayworks student body, there is a great interest in not only functional, but the surface too. So you have a wonderful brushstroke and all that, wonderful design on the surface. And some artists are doing the wood firing or, I intentionally chose different surface too. And I got connected with a local woodworker who can provide actual table. So I wanted to bring your work right next to, say, maybe like a Ted Neal, the style is different, but having all those table set in one table may create different ambiance, and also the serving piece that I requested you guys to make. I knew I wanted to connect with the local flower arrangement, like a florist. So they came, and each week they did the wonderful arrangement using your vessels too. It was nice to have not only clay object in one room, but seeing different type of art coming to our gallery was great experience for us.
Me as a participant, I'm sorry I couldn't make it because I wanted to learn from that. Like you mentioned, the contrast between someone like Ted Neal, who's really using the kiln in a unique way to surface the work versus Sana Mamami or David McDonald or, any of the people that were in the show. Everyone had a pretty unique way of surfacing the work. But can you talk about how doing an event like that helped the community, or how the effect that it had on the community of students at Baltimore Clayworks?
So we offer, God, how many classes that we offer each session? But maybe half of the class that we offer are functional pieces. So I brought my student to the gallery space too, but some of the instructors did the walkthrough with the students and talk about the surface or the form is really important too. It's like your cup or the foot of your plate may be different from other artists' treatment. So we could actually handle it and talk about the each artist's work. So for the people who actually have a knowledge in clay could really appreciate the craftsmanship of what you guys did, of course. But for the gallery patrons or the people who may not have the technical knowledge, they can still come and enjoy how the work, our clay work, can be used in certain environment. And by connecting with other media artists in other media, we could connect with different audience too. They could bring in the flower enthusiasts or the culinary, the chefs and stuff like that. So it was a good outreach resource as Baltimore Clayworks as a nonprofit art center connected to the city. So trying to do not just the clay people, but trying to bring in the general audience was really the focus. And I think this particular show was successful.
One of the things I wanted to say is thank you for getting the woodworker and the florist, because I feel like you as the director of exhibitions, like you were more than prepared. Like a lot of times when I send work to a gallery, it's just really going to go on a pedestal of some sort. It's not being presented in this style of way. And I think it's just, it gets people. Normal people understand. Like if you put pots on a nice handmade table, that they get it. Like you don't almost have to say anything else. Like the presentation is the content in that way. So thanks for doing that, for taking that extra step.
Well, again, thank you for participating, because the pots made it even better. So without the clay pot, there's no show. So yeah, definitely.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of over 4,000 objects made by over 1,000 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfieldcollection.com.
The Bray Clay business is your best source for Bray epoxy, a two-part moldable epoxy intended for post-firing repairs. Working like clay, it's easy to shape, texture, fill gaps, and recreate missing parts. Bray epoxy is sold in tan, white, and black base colors, and we also have a 9-color kit that will allow you to perfectly disguise your repair. Order online anytime at archiebrayclay.com.
Well, I wanted to talk about your relationship with Baltimore Clayworks over time, because you have been a resident, you've been a teacher, you're a staff member now, and also in that time, Baltimore Clayworks has gone through a ton of transition. So can you talk about that, like coming in and then watching the organization change as you're changing as well?
When I was in graduate school, as a international student, the visa was the main issue. In that 3 years of my study, my focus is just to graduate. I could not really think about what will happen afterwards. I know some people are interested in like getting a full-time teaching job or whatever, but residency was not my option because usually the residency program cannot support my visa. At least that's what I thought. But when I was graduating in 2008, that was beginning of the recession. And I still remember like only 2 full-time jobs available in the country, like whole country. I might be wrong, but again, there are not so many jobs available. Fresh out of graduate school, how can I compete to get this tenure track full-time job? There's no way. Then I was looking for another opportunity in years in Sika. I met with Baltimore Clayworks and they say, hey, we might be able to support your visa, but you have to get accepted into the residency program. So while I was getting ready for my thesis show, I sent this one little application to get into this residency program, and they took me in. So it was 2008, after I graduated from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. I moved to Baltimore Clayworks as Lomina Salter Fellow Artist. So that was 1-year assignment. A lot of things are covered, and Baltimore Clayworks luckily supported my 1-year visa as well. And during toward the end of the residency, the job at the front desk associate, the gallery associate position became available. So I applied, and we took me in as full-time staff. Then I continued to teach at Clayworks Studio. Then we have some connection with the local studios or local universities and colleges. So I continued to teach outside, but my main connection was through Baltimore Clayworks. So the time that I was at the Clayworks, the founding director was still in the leadership. And maybe 2 years or 3 years later, that was the first transition that we experienced. And, it just did not work out. Some people are not really, it happened. It shouldn't, but it happened. And it continued to happen for maybe 10 years or so. We went through that transition, and we had maybe 3, 4 executive directors, including the interim. But 2 years ago, Matt Heilich, he was the education director, but he stepped up and become the permanent executive director. And there are, besides myself and Matt, we have 2 or 3 other practicing artists working as a staff. So we know what we need as organization, and as a maker, we know what we need. So I think Baltimore Clayworks is a lot more stable now.
Well, that stability, I think often with both universities and art centers, the instinct when you have an executive director search or any staff member search is to do a national search because it's prestigious. It shows that you're seeking diversity. Like there's a lot of perks to that. But what it is bringing someone outside the community in. They don't know the struggle, like they don't know what you've been through. So I think it's smart to have Matt as the director because he's seen it. Like he's been there. He knows the ups and downs, you as well, the other staff as well. Like it's not new. You're not expecting someone to come in and help shape an organization that doesn't know the community, which makes the job way harder.
Matt especially has been part of the organization since 2000. That's a long time. And again, he is not only the administrative person, but he has been quite active in that. He makes wonderful work, you know? So it's not, our organization was founded by a group of ceramic students, practicing artists. And now after all the changes happen, we are kind of coming back as artists being a core of the operation. And nothing wrong with, executive director being the administrative person without clay background. There are some great organization under the leadership of the people who may not have direct connection with clay. But again, our organization seems like it worked out because the core administrative staff are also the artists.
Can you talk about how the organization serves Baltimore as a whole?
So we are founded in 1980. So we will be celebrating our 45th anniversary next year. And we are located in the northern part of the Baltimore city, but we have a connection with, again, the local university and community colleges. And we send artists and instructors to different schools or like say senior centers or some other organization. Otherwise, they do not have any opportunity to not only touch clay, but any sort of creative activity. So one of the core mission of our organization is to have the outreach program through the community arts program. So we do have a strong connection with not only the people who is interested in clay, but we could be the first interaction with clay activity in the city of Baltimore and some surrounding the area.
Can you talk about the exhibition that's on right now and tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So in June, we featured our own students' work. So it could be the adult student or it could be the kids. We try to have the opportunity for them to have this experience in gallery setting. And now the summer time, we will be featuring the fellowship artists. Jay Surrey Carrington. Jay is the Lomina Salter Fellow, and Jay is having the solo show in the main gallery. And also Wayman Scott, he's an Embark Fellow. We established this new fellowship 2 years ago, focusing on the Maryland-based person of color, the artist of color. We have the full scholarship, the funding for this particular fellowship newly established. So to work in the main gallery, and we also have community arts gallery that Audrey Naiba, she is our AmeriCorps resident artist, and she's doing her own solo show as well.
So the residents really get a lot of exposure if they have a solo show. That's great.
So the fellowship is part of, 1 year fellowship. It's agreement that they have to do the solo show at the end of the residency. And yeah, we try to have even more opportunity through NCCA show or the local gallery or the museum. Like we try to encourage the current resident artists to be part of the show opportunity in the city and beyond.
Yeah, one of the times I came to Baltimore Clayworks was when NCCA was there, which was probably, 10 years ago. It was a while ago. But it made me think that maybe it's time to have it back. So have you guys talked about being a host again in the future?
Yeah, there are some people who was part of that year. I think 2005 or something, wasn't it? God, it's like a long
That was
time
almost
ago.
20 years ago. Okay, yeah.
And they are still talking about how much of the work that they have to put in. So not immediately. I don't know. I don't know what the board is thinking right now. But hey, within 5 years, our 50th anniversary might be around. Will be around. So maybe that would be a great year for us to bring the NCCA to Baltimore.
Well, to wrap up, can you plug your website and social media so people could get in touch if they want to talk more?
Sure. I wish I were better at social media or website and all the technology. I'm the fake Japanese without any knowledge in the technology stuff though. But my website would be yoshifuji.com, which has not been updated for like 10 years or something. It would be really sad. And I also have the Instagram, Yoshi Fuji Ceramics. And I'm not really good at updating either. So if anybody can help me promote, that would be wonderful since I'm not really good at self-promoting myself. But yeah.
Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
I'd like to thank Yoshi for coming on the show. I appreciate him taking the time, and it was wonderful to hear about Baltimore Clayworks. I did want to mention that there's an exhibition up at Baltimore Clayworks right now by J. Salai Carrington called Trans Passions. That's going to be up till August the 24th, so if you're in the Baltimore area, you can check that out. For more information, it's baltimoreclayworks.org. Before we go, I'd like to thank today's sponsors. That's the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art, Cornell Studio Supply, and Bray Clay. If you or your organization would like to be a sponsor on the show, you can get in touch at brickyardnetwork.org. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.